So when you come into the museum, first thing you're going to see, all of the books. And we categorize them by country. For example, on this table is Russia, and on that table is China. But also, for every book, we don't just show you the book. We try to tell you what happened to the book, what happened to the author, give you some context. In fact, you can see over here on some of these books on the wall, you can see the little text. What we do is we give a short introduction in basic English, one sentence. So anybody, even with a very basic English level, knows what they're looking at. And then we give a paragraph or 2 paragraphs to tell the story of what happened. Actually, writing these things is incredibly difficult, and it's a lot of time. Because, of course, for every book, we do a lot of research. And we try to understand, okay, what happened here? First of all, what country is this? You know, what context is this? How long ago did this happen? And what happened to this author? And are we sure about what happened to this author? And how many pieces of evidence do we have? We take these things very seriously. And so writing these small pieces of information becomes quite difficult, but it's a fun challenge. And then translating it to Estonian, also very difficult. But I enjoy that process too. It's a real challenge for me and my girlfriend who translates the stuff. And every time I'm giving her more and more work to do. So yeah, and we go country by country, mostly. And so for example, at the start, we added a big section for America, a big section for China, a big section for Russia. And now we're trying to get as many countries as possible. And I hope that this year and next year, we can represent every country in the world. Because I have studied every country in the world. And what I found is lots of examples. And everywhere I find stuff, every country, even the very small ones. And even the tiny, tiny, tiny little ones. You're thinking about like Liechtenstein and places like that, right? I find stuff there too. So I really want to communicate that censorship, book banning, is not something which happens in Russia. It's not something which happens in China or in some, you know, autocratic kind of countries. This is around the world, and this is something we all have a shared history about. Yes, sir.
Well, just a brief.
Well, actually, already we are out of space. This picture is from over a year ago, and now if a new picture, you would see these tables are, you know, they have stuff piling up, and there's way more here, and this is a whole section here now with George Orwell, only George Orwell section, more stuff at the back. The books are piling up and up and up, and I would love to have a bigger space. I think maybe later I will talk about like the business stuff and why we don't have a bigger space and what we would like to have. But you did also say something really interesting about why does this not exist already? This is why I want to have the question and answer, by the way, because I didn't think to talk about this. But there's a real reason why nobody has done this before. It's technology. Because I do the research, and I can do it in many, many, many languages now, because the technology is there to do it. If you go back 10 years, it's just not possible. If you don't have, unless you have a team of 30 people who speak many languages from around the world and have access with library cards to all of those libraries and have the time to go and do it. Now, today, I have Google Translate. I have technological ways to get anything from different libraries. And that allows me to research in places that I could never normally get information. So if I get an email from a girl in India, this happened, and she says, you know, this book is banned in my region, Hyderabad region in India. I can say, okay, cool. She emailed me, so it's important to her. I need to take this serious. But I need some evidence. I need some proof that this is a real, I need something. Now, because of the technology, I can research in Hindi, and I can access those research papers or textbooks, whatever, newspapers, journalism, online blogs, whatever it is, to get that data. And so technology has enabled this. You don't see it actually when you look at the museum, because we don't have any technology there. It's paper, and we let people just come in and they can touch things. This is a little bit unusual. People don't know how to deal with it when they come in, and they say, "Can I touch the books?" And I say, "Yeah, you can touch it. Can I really?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, like pick them up and you can sit the chairs, you know, they're comfortable." But you have to really push people to do it, because normally in museums,
You can touch stuff.
yeah, you can't touch stuff. And I understand why, you know, but this is, maybe I'll talk now about the business stuff. We could consider this a social enterprise. We run this as a social enterprise. The museum is a registered non-profit organization. I don't make any money. Nobody makes any money. All volunteers. We just all contribute our time and our passion for this topic. And when I say social enterprise, what do I mean? I mean, we are not motivated to make money. We're not trying to make money. We're trying to make a change. And the change is, we want to give people the skills to think about and talk about censorship. Not just to get angry about it. Not just to complain that it's not justified. Not just to write things angrily, you know, on social media, but to actually give people context and history to think and to understand. So often what happens, a person comes into the museum and they say things like, you know, censorship is really bad. No books should ever be banned. I'm a free speech absolutist. Right? We talked about this earlier, Jessica. Free speech absolutism. And they come in with this kind of angry, defensive attitude. And then they look at the stuff and they think, oh, I really don't like this. Or, oh, you know, this book, I'm not sure about this. Or, oh, I didn't know anything about this country. Or I never thought about it this way before. And you can see the wheels turning. That's why I do what I do. When I can see those wheels turning. And they leave the museum. People don't change like in front of you, but they change later on at night when they're in their bed thinking about what they did that day. And what I hope is that people leave the museum, they go home, and they're thinking about this topic, and they become more aware when they see censorship in the media, for example. They're not just getting angry about it, but now they're thinking, I understand this, you know, there's some context for this. I do know something about censorship in China. I do know something about censorship in Russia. So I do know something about censorship in the USA. And that's why we do what we do. Maybe that's a good moment to talk a little bit about censorship. Defining censorship. What are we even talking about here? I like to use this example. This is a book called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Have you guys heard of this book? Right. Every person, that kid, has a good taste. I love this book. But what version did you read? You don't know, right? Probably, almost certainly, you read this one, the middle one, the 1973 version. And what the reason is there are 3 versions of this book. And I like to use this book to talk about what exactly is censorship, and is it editing, but how does it, is it ethical? Can it be unethical? I like to use this as an example. So let's go through time, starting with the first edition. 1964, Roald Dahl releases this book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Very popular. But there's a problem. Maybe you know, the chocolate factory has employees called the Oompa Loompas who have orange skin, right? Unfortunately, not in the first version. where they were not little orange men, they were little black slaves, basically. So in the first version, the Oompa Loompas who help Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory are basically little African slaves. And in 1964, that was fine in the UK, you know, in children's books. You can write that. You can illustrate that. It's fine. But in 1973, you know, a few years later, not so okay. And the film producers, the movie producers, they came to Roald Dahl, to the author, and they said, look, Mr. Dahl, we're going to make a movie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's going to be huge. Gene Hackman is in it. Please, for the love of God, can you change this? How much money? Well, how much money did they spend on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? A lot, I think, on the first version. But even more, because Roald Dahl said no. He said, no, I'm an artist, and an artist doesn't change his work. What are you talking about? He was that kind of guy. And so they came back a second time with a truck of money. And he said, okay, maybe, you know, let's talk about it. And that's why we have the 1973 version, where the Oompa Loompas, now they're little orange men with green hair. And that was fine. So this is the version you guys probably know. This is the version which the movies are based on. And this version was printed in the UK until 2023, last year. Now we have this version. Did you see this in the media? Maybe some of you saw some writing about it. What happened? Penguin Books, Penguin the publisher, they decided they wanted to take another look at Roald Dahl's books, and they employed people called sensitivity readers. And what these people do is they go through the book and they make a list of things which could be insensitive. And then the publisher has to decide, do we make these changes? Do we not make the changes? For example, in this book, they removed the word fat. So there's a child who is, in this version, he is enormously fat. In this version, he is only enormous. So I don't know if that means he's only tall. They removed the word ugly. But the most interesting part, I think, is that the Oompa Loompas, they changed again from being little orange men to little orange people. So they made them gender neutral. Nobody seemed to pay attention to this except for me. Everybody was very upset about the fat thing, about the ugly thing. But I thought that this is definitely the most interesting change, because I think we still don't know why they chose to make this change, actually, because nobody interviews these sensitivity readers. That's a project I would like to do, actually. But nobody has asked them, and they don't release their reasoning. I think it was because they didn't like the idea that only men work in factories. So the Oompa Loompas, they should not be little orange men, they should be people. It's like, okay, maybe, you know, I kind of see it. But the interesting question is that censorship? The author is dead. The family said it was okay. The publisher said it was okay. The law says it's okay. But the author did not consent to that change. And that, for me, especially the changing of characters' gender would, to me, be a creative change. So there's a moral question. Is it right or is it acceptable? Do they have the moral right to change that?
So are these two older books then considered banned books? Or?
That I put to you, sir. Because this is something important about the museum. I don't judge and I don't say. My job is to collect this information and to communicate with people, to give people the tools and the skills to think about this topic. So just as a policy, of course I have my own opinions, you know, but I don't say this is right, this is wrong, this is okay, this is not, this is ethical, this is not justified, you know, this is a ban, this is not actually a ban, this is not real censorship.
But when you're talking about banned books, is it banned by government?
That's the thing. It can come in so many different ways, right? So when we took, in fact, we're going to talk about that just in a moment, all the different forms of censorship. So this is the example. In fact, we'll do it right now. This is the example that I like to give to people to help them to think about editing and censorship and where exactly is that line. All of you guys probably have different opinions about it actually inside your heads right now. And we can talk about it a little bit later, I think. In terms of, as we were talking about, in the museum we classify our books in many different ways. One way is by country, which is quite easy. You know, where did the censorship happen, or alleged censorship? Another way is what year was this published? Another way is what year did the censorship happen? We have all of these different ways, but my favorite way is the way that we came up with. Of course it is, you know. Well, we actually had a problem, which is there isn't really a great model for how to classify like kinds of censorship. So we came up with our own system, which is called the seven censorships, basically. And this is how I like to think about censorship, as a timeline. So there's the author at that side. And he's thinking, he's got a great idea for a book. He wants to communicate something, has an idea inside of his head. Here's you, the reader. You want to recreate that idea inside your head. Now that's a process, getting from there to there. And from the way that we classify this, there are 7 moments when someone else can come in. 7 moments when an uninvited person can come in without the author's consent. Now that's the key part, without the author's consent. And say, excuse me, may I make a change here? And so that's what I call the 7 censorships. We will go through them, and this is how I'm going to show you guys some more of our examples from the museum. But we're going to go backwards like this. You will also notice that there's something about effectiveness here. This is the least effective form of censorship. And that hand at the end, that's the most effective form of censorship. So you can already probably see where I'm going, right? Yeah, so we'll start with some of the less effective forms. So we're right at the end, the first hand here. This is banning books. So we talked about governments. This is a form of censorship. It's often local. It's often only in one region or one district. It's often a court action. Some legal action has been taken and the book is removed from sale, but only in one place. So the book is still widely available, but the government or a church or a school or even a library decides that in their territory it's not allowed. Here's a couple of examples. I was in Belgium yesterday. That's why I brought I was in Brussels yesterday. That's why I was talking. That's why I brought this example. Although it's in Dutch actually. I can't even pronounce it. Sorry, it's because I'm not good with the. Guggenheim. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Exactly. But this was an example of a court case. The writer, you might know this guy, Herman Brusselmans. Okay, yeah. Controversial writer, writes a lot of stuff, likes to generate trouble. That's what I understand. Likes to swear, yeah. In this case, he liked to use the name of a real woman in a book which is a fiction book. But in this one, he used the name of a real woman. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the woman. But in this book, that character is performing some sexual actions. And of course, she turned around and sued the author successfully. He had to pay, and the book was struck. So you cannot publish this in Belgium anymore, in Belgium specifically. You can publish it in the Netherlands, and he continues to do so. So if you guys, you're free to, you know.
Was it someone he knew, or was it just randomly someone named the second?
It was someone he knew, I think. It was a celebrity also. So there's a...
You want to read it?
Yeah. Oh, well, now maybe, yeah, exactly. But it is, you know, there's an ethical, it feels like a little, it feels a little gross.
Yeah.
But this is the main form of censorship that we find in, let's say, in Western European countries and in Northern European countries today, is a court-ordered ban on a book. And again, occasionally it can be with the consent of the author, but usually not. I have another example from here in the Netherlands. I'm not sure how to say this any more clearly than this, but the author Edwin Gilte is a friend of mine, and he was very generous in donating the book to us. So I want to say thank you, Edwin, who is sitting right here. And Edwin has become a good friend of mine. He submitted this book to us way back when we first opened the museum. And at that time, I didn't know if we were doing the right thing. I didn't know if this was a good idea, or if people would care about the project, or if people would come to the museum. And when I got, this was the second book that we got in the museum, submitted to us by an author. And it was a sign, like from God or from Edwin, that people would care about what we're doing, and that the authors would also understand that this is a place that wants to tell their story. I'm a little nervous about explaining what happened while you're sitting there, Edwin.
No, please
But
do, you know.
okay, I'll try. Well, just in brief, what I understand, the book is about the massacre at Srebrenica in Bosnia. The massacre happened there. It's 1995. Yeah, and the book is about that topic. And then there was a court-issued injunction against the publishing of the book, right? So the book was no longer allowed for sale in the Netherlands. And but then Edwin successfully overturned that decision. So now you can purchase this in the Netherlands in Dutch, and soon in English, next month in English, right? In fact, Edwin is coming to Tallinn, to the museum, to launch his book in English, which will be very nice.
Has it always been there, the forbidden book, the note on the cover? Was it always there?
This is that's the version that was published after the incident, right? When it was allowed again.
Yes, of course, you know, when the first edition was being published,
Yeah.
I didn't know, of course, that there would be court cases about the book. You know, I had a suspicion that it might happen, because I write about very sensitive military intelligence
Yeah.
issues, you know, and yeah, it did actually happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And since then it's...
Yeah, I put this note on the second edition. Now there's also a third Dutch edition, and it also has the sticker on it, the forbidden book, het verboden boek.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick, this famous book about Mein Kampf?
Yeah, of
you
course.
know, and was this antique, I love antique bookshop also, and the guy said, of course I have, ja natuurlijk heb ik das, and from under the counter I could buy it for €100. But this is not banned, this is definitely forbidden.
Yeah, this would be. I would agree. Okay, let's talk about Mein Kampf. Because when people come to the museum, there's a few in their head. There's a few books they're already thinking about. They're thinking about 1984. They're thinking often about the Satanic Verses, and they're thinking about Mein Kampf. A couple of words about Mein Kampf. People get very confused about this book, about whether it was banned or not in Germany also. And yes and no, because according to German government, after Adolf Hitler died, the Bavarian government owned the copyright to the book, and they chose not to publish it. And there are restrictions on selling the book. So some people will say the book was not actually banned. It was only not printed again. I would dispute that. I would say if it's not hard ban, it's what we could call a soft ban. It's another term we use sometimes in the museum, soft banning, when there's no list from the government saying this book is banned and this book is banned, but the conditions are created, so it's very hard to get the book. We have two versions of Mein Kampf in our museum. One is a 2016 edition, which is the first one allowed to be published in Germany since the war. This was a special edition. It's very big. I didn't want to bring it because I don't like traveling with that book particularly. But it's a very large edition, which is very well annotated with lots of information about Hitler and about why he wrote what he wrote and about what are the context of every line they go through. So you cannot read the book, his book, without reading why he wrote what he wrote. It's a very clever solution, actually. This is now available. You can purchase this on Amazon if you want, amazon.de. And we also have an original version of Mein Kampf. Because one day, a visitor came in, a young woman from Germany. And she felt very awkward, but she told us, look, I have this. I have an original. She said she found it on the street and she doesn't know what to do with it. It feels wrong to put it in the trash, but she doesn't want it in her house and you can't sell it, or you shouldn't sell it, and she doesn't want to sell it anyway for money. So she said, can I give this book to you? And I said, yes, because we can use this to help talk with people. And this is the place for it, actually, the Banned Books Museum. And we use this book still today. She sent it to us. It's the blue edition, which is the most common edition of the book during the war. And we got it repaired and everything. And we use this book to talk with people. I never say the words Mein Kampf until somebody else says it in the museum. That's a policy we have. But if we have German visitors all the time. And if they come in and if they want to talk about it, okay, we can talk about it. And if they want to see it, they can see it. And what I have seen again and again and again and again, for them, it's very therapeutic to see the book. Because most German people, young people, they've never seen it before, actually. It's like a ghost, right, in the background. And again, people, they take it, they look through it, and they say, this is terrible. Not only politically, but as writing, it's also terrible. And it's very therapeutic for them, actually. And I keep getting this experience where people say, thank you for, I don't want to ever see this again, thank you very much, but thank you for showing me the book. It's very satisfying work, but that book we keep under the counter because I never say the words, I never talk about it until they bring it up. So that's the status of Mein Kampf in our museum. Yeah. I guess maybe afterwards, if you want to learn more about the Dovepot General, you can talk with Edwin. But I'll keep going. Real quick, on banning books. The USA, let's talk about the USA real quick. They ban a lot of stuff, but it's all local. Never across the whole country. That's completely illegal. But you can ban books in your local schools, in your local towns, in your local libraries. Cut to the book Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. You might know right now there is a huge fight in the USA about what books should be in schools. This is a book about a kind of transgender kind of topic, which of course is very sensitive for a lot of people and is making a lot of people very angry. And this book has become the kind of one of the key symbols for that fight. People who are supportive of trans people are very enthusiastic about the book, but a lot of people are kind of attack the book very aggressively and use it as a symbol of everything they dislike. So in many parts of the USA, this is also forbidden book, especially in schools where they have a lot of problems with the content. On the other hand, is the opposite book, When Harry Became Sally, which is a book criticizing what the author would call trans ideology. And this is a book which is banned on Amazon.com because it violates their hate speech policies, which they introduced in 2021. For a long time, Amazon was, you could almost call them a free speech absolutist. They were very, very strong that you can you can publish anything on Amazon. We will sell anything. Until 2021. Then they said, aha, maybe we should review that policy. And we still don't know exactly which books are not allowed on Amazon. But there's a few things which come up again and again and again. Mein Kampf is one of them. Books criticizing trans people and so on, that seems to be a topic which they will not distribute. And there are other things like books about white supremacy, for example, are not on the platform anymore. So there's an increasing list. And actually, in our museum, we have the America section, Canada section, South America section, and between them we have Amazon section. So we treat Amazon like a country, basically. They're as big as a country, and they're financially, in any case. And their influence is in some ways bigger than a lot of countries. So we categorize them. We have a special place just for them, a special place just for the Catholic Church as well. You know, so there's a few special cases we make in the museum. In any case, what do these books have in common? You can still get them quite easily. It's not going to be hard, no matter where you are. And that's why it's the least effective form. It's when the book is already published, it's already out there, but the government or whoever is coming in and saying, we don't allow this. It doesn't work. The books are out there. You can access them. You can download the PDF. It's not very effective. Usually it's a kind of publicity stunt. But something which is slightly more effective, all the way, marketing and distribution controls. So I'll go maybe a little bit faster down the timeline. But marketing and distribution controls, this is when the government, usually the government, has very strong controls over how the books go from the bookseller to you. This is what they do in Russia today. This is a book called All the Kremlin's Men. But you notice you can't read it because it has plastic around it. And I will never take off this plastic because this plastic is part of our museum collection. This is why we're not a library, incidentally. Sometimes we don't even let people read the book. You will also notice that the plastic has a sticker on it which says 18+. This is a book about Vladimir Putin, basically, criticizing him and the way he runs the country, let's say. It's a very famous writer. If you're in Eastern Europe, a lot of people will know this writer, Michael Zygar. And he's particularly famous Russian guy, and he criticizes the government a lot. He has a lot of courage in writing against the government, journalist, author. This book is technically, you can still buy it, but if you want to buy it, you have to go to the shop. You won't see it on the shelf. You have to go to the person at the counter. You have to tell them the name and the author of the book you want. You have to, in some cases, you have to leave your personal details. And then they can take it in brown paper, wrapped up, and give it to you. And then you have to leave and read it in the privacy of your own home. So what does this do? This means the book is still legally available, not banned, but the incentives stop people from accessing the book because people get scared. People are nervous. They are not sure what's going to happen if they try to get the book. So this is what we call market and distribution controls. Another example I have here, a book called The Male Muse. This was also sent to us by the author. The author, editor, Ian Young, he's, I think he must be 82 something years old now. He's a Canadian guy. But he sent this book to us with newspaper clippings from 1974. The original newspaper clippings. He didn't photocopy them. He sent us the originals. And this book, when he tried to import it into the United Kingdom, it was taken, 5,000 copies, put in a pile and burned. Because at that time it was still illegal to publish anything about homosexuality. This is, to be clear, you probably guessed, it's a book about gay poetry. So, and the reason I call this marketing and distribution controls, importing the book. They say, we're not banning the book, but you can't import it into the country. They still do this today in Australia, actually, and in India. This is the main form of censorship that we see. So you can publish stuff, but you can't bring it into the country. It's quite a common tactic, so the government is not technically banning the book. Yeah, it's a very, very dark story. And like I said, a little bit more effective than simply banning the book. Yeah, this is another question I also get quite often, which is, have I gotten in trouble with our collection? Because of course we have 350 books which have been banned, and a lot of them are very offensive. Some of them are really, really not nice. And some of them are even banned in Estonia. But no, we have never been in trouble. Estonia is a very good place to run a project like this because Estonia is an extremely anti-censorship country and culture. Because when you're in Estonia, look, anybody who is over 40 years old, they remember when there was censorship and real censorship. Like when you open the newspapers and there are big pieces are missing, they remember that time. So the culture is extremely pro free speech, pro authors' rights, pro freedom of expression. And for them, it's not abstract. It's real, concrete, serious topic. And they know that they can lose it. So they defend it very aggressively. So Estonia, the best place to run a banned books museum if you're thinking about it. Going a little bit further, I want to talk quickly about approval processes. This is the kind of process that you find in, for example, Soviet Union. So you've published the book, I should say late Soviet Union. So this is when books are still, publishers are still quite empowered. They can publish the book, they can write the book, they can make it, but before you publish it, you've got to send it for approval. And sometimes it's a light society that will allow lots of things, and sometimes they will restrict certain things. An example of this is actually our Estonian book. This is a Suinist Toisnud, I can't pronounce the U, Mehed. In English, it's Dead Men Risen. This is actually a British book, but it is banned in Estonia because of a court case where the soldiers who are represented in the book did not want to be included in the book, and they sued the publisher successfully. But the reason I have it here is I'll find some example of the censorship, because it was also censored in the United Kingdom. You can see the blackout parts. We have a few books in the museum which have this. Not very many publishers choose to include the blackout parts, but sometimes they do. Usually in books which have been restricted for military secrets, which is in this case. So the book has military secrets about Afghanistan, and pieces of it had to be removed before it can be published. So this process still continues today, and even in open societies like the UK, for example. But it was very characteristic, of course, in Soviet Union when books like The Master and Margarita, which we have here. This is a samizdat version. That's Russian, it means underground. Basically, it's an underground book. We're not sure But we think that this book was made around this exact book was made around 1970, early 1970s. You can see it's photocopied, or an early version of photocopying. And this is a new binding here, but you can see from the foxing that this is actually very old. And this would be handed quietly from person to person. No cover on this one, no copyright information, no nothing. And this would be homemade and then handed from people to person, whoever wants to read The Master and Margarita, which has been censored a number of times in the Soviet Union. It's a complicated history with Master and Margarita. But we are now collecting a lot of these underground samizdat editions in our museum. They're very hard to find, though. I mean, most countries will consider this a historical artifact at this point and worthy of being in a museum, so they're actually hard to find. So approval processes, slightly more effective resource control. This is quite similar, where publishers may not have the physical resources that they need. So if the government, for example, let's say a Russian government, decided they wanted to restrict the publishers, they can restrict the physical access to the materials they need to publish the book. Here I have another example, another samizdat edition. Anyone speak Russian? It says Esperanto, which in the Soviet Union was illegal for many years because they didn't, and in Nazi Germany too, because they didn't like this idea of the universal European, especially European language. They had other ideas about which language should be the universal language. So, but this one I like very much because I think it was made by like quite a young person and kind of photocopied and stitched, kind of stapled together, or not even stapled, literally just glued together. So we don't know how old this is exactly, but it's quite nice to try and find these historic artifacts. A little bit earlier than this, and this is getting darker and darker, is publisher capture, where the publishers are controlled essentially by the government or by the Catholic Church, for example, and they decide what they may and may not publish. Usually the publishers they know, and they know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Or they could be financially controlled. The example here, we have two examples. One is 1984. I'm sure, Animal Farm, the other one. I'm sure you know Animal Farm, great book, and I'm sure you know that it has been banned many times in many different countries. Why is it in Arabic, though? Anyone? Because of the pigs, yes, people know. Because of in this case, it's not banned because of its criticism of authoritarianism. It's banned because of because it includes pigs, which in Islamic cultures are haram, and so there are mixed feelings about whether you should publish this book or not. In the United Arab Emirates, this is not allowed, and this is why we have it in Arabic, which is a slightly more interesting version. Again, a kind of cheap homemade one. I like this one particularly because you can see the fingerprints of the people who are making it. Like right here. So when they're kind of hand printing it, they made a few mistakes. You can't really read the copyright information either. So I like to find that. And then one of my favorite books in the whole museum, Xi Jinping and His Lovers. Like I said, before I lived in Estonia, I lived in China for many years, and I studied Chinese language, Chinese philosophy. And I was very disturbed by the propaganda and the censorship and nationalism that I saw there. Now, when I moved to China, Xi Jinping was just coming into power. So at that time, China was still an open country. You might remember when China was very pro-Western, pro-business. Everybody should come and learn Chinese. In the schools, they were teaching, European schools, they would teach kids how to speak Chinese. Now, not so much, because the country, unfortunately, has become more and more xenophobic, nationalist. And unfortunately, a lot of the friends that I have in Inner Mongolia province in the north where I lived, ethnic minority group members, things for them have become incredibly difficult. And for Hong Kongers too, including the Hong Kongers who published this book. The people who published this book, Causeway Bay Books in Hong Kong, that doesn't exist anymore because the police went in to the bookshop and removed the managers, kidnapped them, took them to China and imprisoned them, except for one, Lam Wing Ki. He escaped to Taiwan and he started a new bookshop where he continues to sell this kind of stuff. So he is my absolute hero in this world. I hope one day to interview him, but he only speaks Chinese and my Chinese is like about the same as my Estonian, which is not good enough for an interview. Cool. Go a little bit further. Self-censorship. This is when the authors, they want to write about the book, but they have strong incentive not to write about the book because they're scared for their safety, for example, or financial consequences. There's a book, every South American knows this book. Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina, The Open Veins of South America, or Latin America. This is a book about dictatorship in Latin America and how it comes about. And of course, many of the countries there have this history of dictatorships. And the author really suffered for writing this book. He knew he would suffer, but he chose to write it anyway. He overcame that self-censorship, which was very brave of him. And he escaped and had to move from country to country in Latin America because the people were they were trying to kill him. So this is a very challenging stage. This is also the moment when our museum collection breaks down, because usually books don't get past this point. It's very rare. Anything before this, higher up in the spectrum, we can get the books usually. Eventually we can get them. But this is where the books don't even exist at all. Another example is a book I have here, kind of a similar situation where it's about the diamond mining in Angola, which is a really dark and dirty industry. And the author, unfortunately, was subject to physical attack after writing the book. By the way, when we're finished here, you guys are welcome to come and touch and read and smell the books. And finally, the worst and most effective form of censorship of all, which I call harmony. A little bit sarcastic, but you have to be. We try to have a little bit of humor in the Banned Books Museum. Harmony is a situation where the writers can't even write about the topic, they don't even have the information to write about the topic in the first place.
Jos is entering.
Hi, Jos.
Hi.
So this is a situation in which the writers, they can't even write about the book that they would write about the book, but they don't have the information to even know what they're talking about. This is the kind of censorship that you find in China today. It's extremely sophisticated, extremely effective, and it stops people from even knowing about the topic that they would write about. The book I used to talk to, the books don't exist. They don't get beyond this stage. If you want to get beyond this stage, you have to live in a culture where that control doesn't exist. But to illustrate the point, I have a book called the Tiananmen Papers. When you go to China, you guys probably know about Tiananmen Square, right? And the massacre which happened there to students in 1989. But when you go to China today, what you will find is that very few people know about it. Very few people, especially young people, know that anything happened there at all. So it is a very successful system, a very efficient way to stop the books from existing. So the problem ceases to exist. And it's a system which I somewhat ironically call harmony, because there just isn't a problem. It's smoothed out. This is also the justification that the Chinese government uses when they're justifying this surveillance state that they have now. Everything is for harmony. It's all so there's less crime. It's all to make society a little bit smoother. It does make it smoother. A lot more painful to live in it, though. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk to you guys about the museum. I mean, as you can see, it's something which I'm incredibly passionate about. Obsessed with, a little bit mad about it. And I get up in the morning and I start thinking about this. I start addressing the emails about the latest books which have been banned. And it's a never-ending project, sometimes depressing, often depressing. But when it's something you care about, you just have to do it, right? And in the museum, when we have visitors who are from Hong Kong, or they're from Iran, or they're gay guys from Russia, or many other groups of people, and when they come into my museum and they walk around and they see things that speak to them, it's just an amazing experience to see them connecting with each other and feel like somebody cares about them and somebody wants to record their story and talk about what is happening to them. And that's something which is a real privilege for me, and it means a lot to me to see that happening. Just a couple of days ago, I had a couple in the museum from Brazil. And they're walking around the museum. People walk in this direction. And then suddenly the girl starts crying, a lot. And I asked the boyfriend, is she okay? What's happening? And he didn't really speak English, they only spoke Portuguese. And he kind of said to me, yeah, she's okay, but this is really, really personal for her. And I said, okay. And they came to me. They gave me a very large donation. And they said, thank you. Please keep doing what you do. And they walked away. And I have no idea what their story was. I have no idea. I will never see that couple again. I don't know what happened to that woman, except that she was extremely emotional. Something in her was extremely personally affected by what we're doing. It's for her that I do this. I don't do this because I think I'm going to make money. I don't do this, I do it because I can come to places like this and talk with people like you. And hopefully you can kind of sharpen up your understanding of the topic and maybe think a bit more about how we see censorship in the world today and understand a little bit more how it happens in different countries and why it's important for us to listen to authors and to protect authors, even if those authors might be people that we don't like. Like I said, a lot of the books in the museum I personally really don't like. This one, this is the Green Book. This is a book written by Colonel Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi. Not a book I have sympathy with. But it should be here. Because in 2011, tens of thousands of people took this book, threw it in the street and burned it. Big fires all around Libya. That's an important story to tell. So that author needs to be represented here. Even if I disagree with his work, even if I don't like it. So for me, it's really important to collect these stories, and I'm really glad to be able to share them with you today. So thank you very much for listening. I think maybe we should do some question and answer stuff a little bit more. What do you think? Yes, sir.
So in the 3 years that this museum is open now, was there at some moment a situation where a banned book was no longer banned? For example, the Portuguese couple that you said.
Yeah.
Change of government in Brazil.
Yeah, that's right. It does happen sometimes that we have to update our stuff. I don't know about a book becoming unbanned. I don't know if we have an example of that, but one that the first thing I thought about was a book called The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. Maybe you guys know the book a little bit. Salman Rushdie, British author, British Indian author. His book was burned a lot in 1988, and that's why we have it in the museum. But last year, no, 2022, he was stabbed, unfortunately, in New York City at an event where he was standing up and talking to a group of people. It's scaring me right now to even think about it. But yeah, unfortunately, he was attacked. He's fine now. He's writing again. He lost an eye and the use of one hand and everything. But he's back. And again, kind of a hero to me that he can return from something like that. So of course, in that moment, we have to update our stuff. And I take down the thing. And this is an ongoing, unending process because a lot of the writers are still alive. They're continuing to do whatever they do. And from time to time, new information comes out that we did not expect. Or we just decide to focus on something different. Actually, you can see Anne Frank is up there. Yeah. You see the flag next to it is a German flag. This is an older photo where originally we had that book there because we wanted to tell the story about there was a book burning in Germany where they burned Anne Frank. It was basically an anti-Semitic kind of thing. It's not a nice story. You can probably imagine the details. And that's the story we told. But it didn't feel like a great story and it didn't feel quite right. And now we have the same book, but with the Dutch flag. And instead we talk about the role of Otto Frank, actually, in the creation of the book. Probably a lot of you already know, but he edited the book, or some would say, arguably, censored the book to remove a lot of content. Again, it's a difficult one to say because we don't know what Anne Frank's intentions were as a writer, but you could certainly argue that he censored his daughter's work, or that argument has been put forward. So that's the story that we choose now to tell, and that's why we keep having to update our stuff as well.
But Anne Frank is now also banned in American schools because of some sexual...
Yeah, exactly. The new editions of it are, yeah. It has gone 180 degrees because it was one of the few books that all American kids were taught, which is a real problem because when you lose that, they can't communicate when they're adults about books. If you have a situation, what you have now in America is a situation where there are so many cultures and they're teaching very different books in the schools. 10 years later, those kids are adults. And when they're trying to talk about literature, it's like they don't have the same references and they don't understand it the same way. And this problem is going to get worse, actually, in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's a great idea to remove the books on the basis that she talks about getting her period, for example, which is in this edition that we have. Yeah, there's the writer Miriam Presler is the editor is a woman, Miriam Presler. She basically went and re-edited the books to include more of what Anne originally talked about, sexuality and all these kinds of things. So this is the edition which we choose to get. But of course, there are many different versions of the book available today.
Children that are older than Anne Frank can't even read what she wrote.
Yeah. Girls who have got their period can't read about this girl who got her period in 1944. And yeah, it's traumatic for them. I often have, there is a slide after this which has some happy pictures about our community, actually. When we first got the space, some people from my university who helped us to put it together, anyone who can paint. Our opening day one during the coronavirus. I don't recommend starting a business during the height of a global pandemic, by the way. And a couple of months ago, at our latest Christmas party, where we have this big happy community of people, 30 people in our book club actually, and just friends and family and supporters and professors and academics and so on, that we've just people can come to us like magnetically, you know, people who really love the topic, like Edwin. But I wanted to show, yeah, we do these student tours very often in the museum, and over here you can see like some of our young students from high school age, and I often ask them, you know, are you guys okay? You know, have you been traumatized by this experience in the museum? And they laugh and everything, and they think, no, it's ridiculous, but it helps them to think about the topic, and it's really fun actually too. It's my favorite thing to do, is to speak with the high school kids. And the dog. Yeah, that's Sky, and she's my baby, and she also lives in the museum. Yeah, we also have the Banned Books bus with a tent, and we can take the museum collection and put it in the bus and travel with it. So far, we have done a few different locations in Estonia, and I hope later this year we'll go to Lithuania. We'll go to Vilnius, the university there.
You go to the universities or schools or?
Yeah, universities, schools, and like festivals, things like that. We haven't often do it, but it's a few times now. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Because this museum, is it in the city or is it central?
Yeah, that's right. It's in the center of the capital.
Okay.
Yeah, in the old town kind of part of Tallinn. So it's very accessible to people, but it's not accessible if you're a kid living in Narva, which is the far east city of Estonia, where there's not so many resources and things like that. So that's why we like to put things in the bus, drive to them. Yeah, it's actually a nice way to share the collection. Yeah, and we do the kind of book group tours and museum tours with teachers and things like that as well. Yeah, maybe a little bit about the business side of it. This is also one way in which we make money. We don't charge people to come into the museum. It's free to enter, which is very unusual in Estonia. But we do charge for tour groups, and we sell books, and we accept donations. And people in the book club pay a little bit of money, €1 every month. And this is how we keep going. And a lot of blood and passion and tears.
And what is the book club? You read books together? Or
That's right.
discuss about
Every month we choose a new book, and or I choose a book. It's not a democracy.
Oh,
And
too.
well, I feel I have the right to ban things, you know, on the basis that I understand the topic. But yeah, we choose a book every month, and everybody has a month to read it. And the last Sunday of the month at 7 o'clock Estonia time, we get together and we talk about it. Yeah, and there's 30 people are registered with our book club. In practice, usually about 7 or 8 people show up, and that's fine because the other people, they want to contribute a little bit every month to support the museum, and that's very kind. If you're interested in this topic, you can visit our Facebook page or Instagram, which will link you to those, or follow me on LinkedIn. Apparently, I forgot that was there. But yeah, and that's how we do it. The book club is a lot of fun. The book club has been the way in which we kind of bring our community together. Yeah. So.
Ways of getting attention.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Sorry that
you're right. This does happen. This happens very commonly in America. Right now, they have discovered, many publishing houses have discovered that you can market a book very, very successfully if it has been banned. So, for example, about 1 year ago, there was a New York politician called, I can't remember her name actually, but she wrote a book about her life. Nobody is going to read the book. So she gave it a special title. She called the book Penis Power. The book has nothing to do with penises or their power, but it means that the book was banned from Facebook and Instagram. Banned. You're not allowed to use those words on that platform. So she turned around and said, Facebook is censoring me. Facebook is banning my book. And the media goes crazy. She was on, let's say, the right side of the spectrum, and her community got very excited about it. They rush out, they buy her book, and I don't know if she got into office, but whether she did or she didn't, she made a lot of money from it. It works. It works. It has worked many times in the past also. There's a number of the books in the museum are there because they became very famous because of the censorship. There's a book called Spycatcher, for example, a British book which is about spies. The author published it, and nobody cares. But then the British government tried to stop it, tried to block it. Suddenly, everybody rushes to buy it, and the author died like 5 years later, a millionaire. This happens again and again and again. So if you're trying to market your book, you know, I'm not saying do it. I'm saying if you do it, it might end up in the Banned Books Museum, though. I do have a strange incentive there, actually. And you talked about like responsibility. Yeah, it is difficult actually, but you know, you have to treat like what's the saying? There's like a saying which is like you have to treat a serious thing as a joke, and a joke is a serious thing, and that's what I try to do here. It's if I get too deep into it and start worrying about, you know, the details, and start worrying about like getting myself depressed about this topic, then it's not helpful. I had this last year when we did the Africa section. When I started doing research for African books, I swear it was a very depressing experience, because I had to learn not only about every country in Africa, but about its recent history in order to talk about the literary context. And that is not fun exercise. So my girlfriend was very happy when I decided to stop halfway through, and because it was bringing me down.
Yeah.
And then if I'm down, I'm no help for anybody. So I try to just stay calm, treat this topic with a degree of humor, and you can be funny about it. I mean, you know, look how nice the place looks, and there's plants and everything is colorful, and there's nice, gentle music playing, and it makes a difference, right? When you walk into the place, and it's not threatening. It's not a cold white box. I'm not watching you like hello, and staring at you while you walk around.
Judging which book you take.
I'm not judging. No, not at all. In fact, I want people to kind of like interact with the things that are most interesting for them. So we try to create this friendly, humorous, ironic, colorful environment where people can think about these really dark things, but still have enough mental strength to go through it and to engage with the topic. It's a difficult balance, yeah. But yeah, you just try to stay positive, I guess, and keep moving forward.
Read it.
Yeah, I mean,
It has a,
to be clear, we don't market books, and actually we're very, very careful even about what we sell in the museum, because we choose not to sell. We don't sell books from our collection. We sell books which are about censorship, because we are not trying to say we are very careful about like making money from some of this stuff. You know, I would not want to sell Mein Kampf or something like that. We make a few exceptions for classic books like 1984, you know, Animal Farm, Origin of Species, you know, things like that. But in general, we don't sell anything. And you know, Edwin, we've been friends for a long time. I think Edwin understands and would respect that I can't sell his book, because we have regulations that prohibit that. But I think that, you know,
I also want to explain
authors would
something
get that.
you know, I was in a difficult situation when the book came out in 2014. It was 10 years ago, and I don't think there's a scary situation right now.
I think you're safe here and right now, Edwin. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Well, then
as far
you
as-
think of you know, CIA, whatever. Anyway, but
The CIA, I'm not worried about so
No.
much. The Chinese version of them, they have been into the museum and they have checked us out. Yeah,
Oh,
but they're fine. They can't do anything in Estonia anyway.
And-
So
Nog
and-
andere mensen vragen?
sorry.
Can you still go to China then?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know. I would have to. I probably will never know, because what happens is if you can't go to China, they don't tell you can't go. What happens is you apply your visa, and then they say it was rejected for a technical reason, and they don't tell you why. You just unofficially, that's how they do it. It happened to a person I know. Sorry.
Did you experience that?
No, I've not experienced that. I haven't been to China since 2014. No, it's my imagination.
How you earn your money?
with difficulty. Yes, with difficulty. We do not accept at this time any money from government or from city or from the EU. Part of the reason is that if you do take that money, it has a list of things that you have to do and things that you have to focus on. In Estonia, for example, you can get the money from the government, but then I would have to focus on the Estonian story. And I love telling the Estonian story. We have a bunch of stuff. And this year, our project is to tell the Estonian story, but I don't want to do it because they tell me to. And I don't want to do it because I might lose money if I don't.
You don't want to be dependent.
Exactly, dependent, exactly. So yeah, I don't want to be dependent on anybody. So that makes it a little bit difficult. It means that we have to make money other ways. Like I said earlier, we're a social enterprise. So think of like a non-profit which still makes money. We sell books, we sell socks, we sell candles, we sell tour tickets. We accept donations. Most of our money comes from donations. People come into the museum and it moves them, and they give a little bit, they give 50 cents or they give €5, or occasionally they give €100, and that makes up most of our income. Yeah.
What kind of books do you sell?
We sell books which are about censorship, studying the topic from different perspectives, and we sell a few classics like 1984 and Brave New World, Handmaid's Tale, that kind of thing. But most of the books we don't sell. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
And you go around on tour in Europe, or a little tour, small tour?
This is kind of the first time trying it out.
And where do you speak? At libraries or?
I don't often speak, actually. This is one of the first times. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, thank you. You guys, thanks, Jos, for helping me to arrange this. But yeah, this is what I hope to do more of in the future. Yeah, because I think that this is a topic which is not going away. Censorship of writing has been around for 5,000 years, right? We have examples from ancient Babylonia of censorship of writing. So this is not going away. It's kind of part of what we do. It's part of how we communicate. So it's not very helpful to say banning, which they just did last week in Oregon in the USA, or to say censorship does not exist, which is what they do in a number of European countries in the Constitution, actually. That's not dealing with the problem. Dealing with the problem is long-term painful educational processes and helping people to understand, look, it's like fire, right? We're never going to get rid of fire. Fire is going to be a problem forever. People will always have fires and have accidents with fires. So we don't ban fire. We have a fire department, right? We have people who understand the topic, know what to do. We have institutions which know how to deal with it. We teach people at a basic level what fire is and how to manage it, maybe even how to apply it in a safe way in specific environments. And that's how I prefer to deal with the problem. I think that's a healthy way to deal with the problem.
If you say you have institutions who know how to deal with it, that's also in banned books interesting, because what books are in the library, or what books are in
exactly. So that's why I would hope to empower librarians, for example. Empower librarians to understand what censorship is. This happens again and again and again in banned books, right? I get librarians who come in, or teachers, and they say, the students want to talk about this, I don't know what's going on. I didn't get into teaching to talk about censorship or to deal with book banning. That's not why teachers teach. But now they have to deal with it. You guys are on the front lines in this like serious cultural challenge. And so it's really important, I think, that all of us here empower people like them, right, with the skills and the knowledge to talk to members of the public and to make decisions, understanding the historical context. I don't know how it goes here in the Netherlands, but I hope that those kind of resources are available and skills can be available. I hope to be part of that process. Yeah.
Now you have e-books. Has there already been an e-book banning, or and I see here Facebook, help me, Twitter,
Instagram and LinkedIn.
Instagram and LinkedIn.
So this means the whole world. You have, I have the whole wild world in my arms. The museum. You're not only there. You're everywhere.
We could be. We've been toying. Well, there's a lot to dissect there. First, I would say the idea that young people are not interested in reading. I can solve that. Easy, right? This is what you do. You take them to the Banned Books Museum. You tell them that they're not allowed to read the book. They will pick it up, they will sit in the corner, and they will read it from cover to cover. It works every time. I have a 100% success rate with this. And parents come to me and they say, I have never seen my child sit silently and read before. It works every time. But the e-books question, yes, it is. It's a real risk. Actually, I interviewed an author this happened to him because he was printing and making his book available through Amazon. And then Amazon decided his book was violating their policies. Actually, this was an author I have very little sympathy for in terms of his political views. But still, it's a case of censorship So I interviewed him. It was a very interesting conversation, and it can happen, yes. And there's a serious financial consequence for him. He spent a lot of time writing his book. And when it's not available anymore, he loses a lot of money. So it is a topic of the future, but I choose to focus only on physical books. We don't focus on anything else. We don't even have comic books. We don't have journalism. We don't have films. We don't have music. Because if I tried to do that stuff, my head would explode. Right? So what I hope is that the lessons we learn from the books, that censorship, that generally applies to other mediums as well. But yeah, one day we'll expand and ban everything. It's the International Museum of Censorship. One day, but in some nice town in some nice part of Europe like this one, who knows? But at this time, we focus only on books because my head is, I would lose my sanity if I tried to stretch any further. Cool. Yes, thank you, Natalie.
Thought, because books are about people, and actually we are talking about banned people. And when you experience, like me, to be a banned person, it really hurts. And I want to keep that in mind, that books are about people.
There's a quote from Heine, German writer Heine, that where they ban books, or where they burn books, they will burn people. He equates people and books and says these are not actually separate things. And I see that again and again. I mentioned when I lived in China, I was very close with the ethnic minority groups, and the Chinese government would target those books about the ethnic minority books, and then they would target the language, and then they would target the culture, and now they target the people, like the Uyghurs and the Tibetans. Same in Russia with homosexuals. First you criticize them through things like religion, and then you come for their literary work, and then you come for them physically. I hope that this has been interesting for you guys, and you're welcome to join and follow us and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram. And to learn more about the Banned Books Museum, visit bannedbooksmuseum.com. You know, but yeah, it's been great, and I hope to come back and keep talking with you guys. And yeah, I'll keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Really want to thank you for a really interesting afternoon, and I have some special Amersfoot presents for you, a candle to burn.
Thank you.
And stones to eat.
Stones to eat. Thank you. Here, give me a hug.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.